Wisconsin Eye's 2014 election coverage is brought to you by the Wisconsin Hospital Association. For over 90 years, a valued voice for Wisconsin hospitals, supporting high-quality, high-value care in communities like yours.
Wisconsin Eyes at the Brown County Library, interviewing candidates in 2014 elections. We're interviewing Assistant Assembly Majority Leader Representative Jim Steineke of Kokana. He's a Republican seeking re-election, Assembly District 5. Jim, welcome back to Wisconsin Eye.
Thanks, Steve. I appreciate it.
A programming note, Wisconsin Eye appreciates the support of the Wisconsin Hospital Association, which represents more than 139 hospitals and health systems, for making these candidate interviews possible. Jim, there's been so many major policy changes that you've seen, not only the last session, but the previous session, going back to Act 10. The question, my general question is this: what's left to do in next session, assuming you're reelected and again in leadership?
Yeah, there's, that's a question on a lot of people's minds, because we did get so much done in the last 4 years, but there's a lot of work out there left to be done. There's a lot of reforms that we still need to put into place. We want to streamline government, make it more accessible and responsive to people. We want to get people back to work, and that includes more worker training programs and connecting people to those jobs and the training programs. There's an endless list. I could go on, but working on the economy, making sure that every person that wants a job has the access to a job is really important for us. And I know that's what we're hearing out there on the streets.
The governor last week was asked whether right to work is an issue. He said, "Not for me." Is it an issue for you?
No.
It is not? Okay.
No.
Okay. Centerpieces of the state budget will be funding public schools. As you may have another leadership role, what are your priorities as we adopt the next K-12 budget?
Well, we need to continue to invest in K-12 education. It's extremely important. As the husband of a public school teacher, I see firsthand, how important it is that we get them the resources that they need. That being said, I think that is going to be a main priority of ours going forward. K-12 education is critical for the success of the state as a whole and going forward. Now, the funding formula is something that we need to look at because as the levy credit over the years has grown, schools in my district have not gotten the resources they needed in comparison. So we need to look at the funding formula as a whole, and specifically the levy credit, and that's something that I'll try to do.
With the recent shortfall in tax collections in fiscal 2014, are you going to have enough money to take a look at a new school aid formula in the next session, Jim?
I believe so. And those are projections, and we'll see what the next round of projections look like. But I believe things the picture will start to improve over time, and we'll have to make choices, but K-12 education is always going to be a priority of ours. A
big issue is the future of school choice and vouchers. Do you think the outstate enrollment cap of 1,000 should come off?
Well, I'm open to looking at it. I think what we need to do, I think we do need to proceed cautiously, but it's always interesting to me that whenever we talk about the school choice program, we're always talking about the public school and the private school, and we're talking about buildings and staff. What we really should be focusing on are the kids. Really, what I want to do is ensure that the kids in my district, wherever there are great schools, whether they're public or private, that they have access to those schools. I think that's the thing that's most important to me, not whether they're public or private. We just got to get kids into schools that are performing really well.
So you want to keep, though, the choice and voucher program statewide, correct?
Yeah, I don't see any reason to go back. We haven't seen any issues with funding as it stands right now, but I do think we need to proceed cautiously in anything that we do. So I'm open to looking at anything as far as raising caps, but I do think we have to ensure that the funding is there for all schools.
2 months ago, Governor Walker asked leaders like you to withdraw from the Common Core standards. You must have an interesting perspective being married to a public school teacher.
Yeah. You know, it is, the Common Core has obviously become a hot button issue over the course of time. And I do think there are a lot of valuable tools in the Common Core. I do think that there's also areas that we can improve as a state. And I think you talk to any educators or administrators throughout the state, that's what you'll find, is that they like aspects of it and they don't like others. So I think that gives us an opportunity in Wisconsin to build off of the good things that are in there and move away from some of the other things. So what I would like to see is I would like to see the state education experts throughout the state sit down and really review these standards and make appropriate changes where necessary and move forward with more Wisconsin-based standards.
Transportation funding has been called one of the toughest issues, if you're reelected, you're going to face. The Taxpayers Association said if we fund at 2013 levels for 10 years, we're $2 billion with a B short. Mm-hmm. What are your thoughts on how any deficit should be made up?
There's no doubt that there's going to have to be something done to address that problem. The base of funding for transportation is going to have to be broadened if we want to protect our infrastructure and maintain it going forward. That could take a number of different resources to get that done. I know they've looked at tolling, they've looked at raising the registration fee, they've looked at fees based on miles driven. I'm not sure exactly what the right answer is at this point, but I think the taxpayers have to be aware that if we're going to maintain our roads, there is going to have to be something done to address that, to broaden the base and increase the revenues for transportation.
You willing to consider the recommendations of the task force 2 years ago? Because it did include raising the gas tax that hasn't been raised since 2006, and it also included every year when you and I get our $75 registration fee, estimate the miles driven. What are your feelings on those?
Yeah, I think the miles driven is a little bit more problematic because you have to self-report. And you're basing it. I think it would be enforcement would be difficult. The gas tax I have similar concerns on is that with raising a CAFE standards and as mileage. Miles per gallon is increased over the course of time, that gas tax is not a sustainable source of revenue, I think, long term for the transportation fund. So I think we have to get much more creative and come up with a much broader base.
Leaders like you decided to not move ahead with any of those recommendations. We're back on transportation in the last session. Instead, we're borrowing $991 million. Why was a decision made to not go ahead with any of the task force recommendations, Jim?
Well, I wasn't involved in any of those conversations in particular. I think in a struggling economy, the last thing that we wanted to do was raise taxes. Okay. But going forward, I think it's something that we need to, again, look at as far as broadening the base and looking at those task force recommendations. Okay. It's just something that we can't let slide.
Okay. Healthcare funding. 1 in 5 Wisconsin residents get health care through the Medicaid program. The American Hospital Association says we're second from the bottom in reimbursement rates. Do you think there should be money found to raise those rates?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's a huge hidden tax on private health insurance, because if the government isn't reimbursing at rates that are appropriate and can sustain the practice, those costs are just going to be passed on to private health insurance. So I do think that we need to address that.
That $281 million shortfall in tax collections in the last fiscal year, are you not really worried about that in terms of causing a long-term major deficit again?
No, I mean, I think we're always concerned about those going forward, but I think it's something that we'll likely grow our way out of, and we have been pretty fiscally responsible over the course of the last 4 years in setting aside more money in the rainy day fund. So I think it'll be manageable, and when you're talking about a budget the size of ours in the state, $281 million is not a great percentage of that.
Okay. There was a bill last session to legalize medical marijuana. It'll be reintroduced. Now we have the states of Colorado and Washington legalizing the recreational use. Your position on those issues?
I'm much more open to the idea of medicinal marijuana, but I'd like to see that in forms that don't have the intoxifying effect, if that's the right word. And then as far as anything else, I'm not not in favor of legalizing marijuana for recreational use. I think we're starting to see some of the issues come out in other states that have done that, with the number of intoxicated drivers on the rise, and that's something that we definitely don't need in this state.
And then going along with that is, are you comfortable that Wisconsin is the only state where first offense drunken driving is not a crime?
Well, I think if you look at the statistics, the first offense isn't where the majority of the problem is. The people that we really have to hammer down on are the people that repeat. That's where the majority of the problems lie, and that's where I think the statistics would bear out that the worst offenders are in those repeat offenses. So I don't know that we necessarily need to criminalize first offense. I do think we could make the penalties more severe without criminalizing it to make it more of a deterrent effect. But I don't think we need to fill up our jails with first offense drunk drivers.
Two questions on environmental issues. The mining bill that passed early last session continues to be one of the hottest things as I interview candidates. Do you think it needs to be amended or tweaked in any way, or are you still quite proud of your vote for it?
Yeah, I'm comfortable with it. I mean, we've still, people have to understand that the state DNR, the Army Corps of Engineers, the EPA, all those organizations are overseeing this project. I don't think any one of them has ever been accused in the past of being overly business friendly. So I think they'll do a good job of regulating the activities up there. And we still have to see ultimately if there is ever going to be a mine. You know, they're still going through their exploratory phase up there to see if it's even feasible to operate a mine up there. So we've got a long ways to go, but as of right now, I think we're comfortable with the legislation that was passed.
Senate Democratic leader Larson calls that $700,000 donation by GoGibic to fight the Gov and Senate recalls pay to play. Do you want to respond as a leader?
No, I mean, I don't think that really deserves a response. I think it's ridiculous on its face, and candidates across the political spectrum get donations from people that believe in what we believe in as candidates, and that's just the nature of the business. So I think that's pretty ridiculous.
I understand. It's not an issue in Assembly District 5, but this frac sand debate seems to be,
Sorry about that.
That's all right. Seems to be the state should set minimal standards that no local government could go beyond, or local government. It's a local government issue. Where do you come down on that?
I'm very, very cautious anytime that the state is looking at stepping in and preempting local government's rights to govern. Okay. You know, I think when you look back at the foundings of our country, and even Alexis de Tocqueville mentioned this in Democracy for America, is that the more decisions made at the local level, the better off that the overall government is and the people are.
Okay. Finally, do you want to highlight any differences between you and your opponent on November 4, sir?
No, absolutely not. I let my opponent talk for himself and let him highlight where he stands on the issues. I'll do the same. I've always ran a positive campaign based on what I believe and not what I think the other guy does or doesn't believe in. So that's the way I choose to run my campaign, and hopefully we'll have a good election based on those beliefs.
Thank you. Assistant Assembly Majority Leader Jim Steineke from Kaukauna is seeking re-election in Assembly District 5. Jim, thanks for talking to Wisconsin Eye.
Thank you.
Thank you.